Oh, golly gee willikers. Technology is fantastic when it's working. Welcome to Freedom Bros. After a week off at the gym, I am back. Dustin Hurst, Freedom Bro number 2. Greg Pruitt is texting people about the NFL draft instead of paying attention to the show.
I
What's
wish.
up, Greg?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be here again. And dude, we are less than a month from the election. It's
It's
coming, dude, and it's getting nasty. It's getting
it's
nasty.
getting so nasty and just so dishonest. Just so dishonest. We kind of knew this was coming. We've been through this before. We've seen it before, um, but the special interests are pissed, right? They're so
Yeah,
mad that conservatives gained seats in the last election. They are just flooding the airwaves. They're flooding every channel with spending. It's crazy to see the amount of money and that's being poured into getting the special interest cronies back in their seats. It's fantastic. Love that. So we're going to talk about
yeah,
that
yeah,
tonight. We're going to talk about
yeah.
a lot of
And the
things.
elections get more and more spendy here in Idaho. It's freaking weird, man.
Well, did you see that there was a donor who dropped $1 million, one single donation of $1 million into a pro education choice pack, which I can appreciate, but that's I do not know if anybody has ever spent in a single donation given a donation like that. I mean, I know Tommy Alquist spent 4 million of his own money to run a
Yeah.
failing campaign, but other than that, like I can't think of anybody who's ever dropped that much money in an election. It was cool to see because I like the cause, but man, it's getting spendy. So anyway, this is Freedom Bros. Tonight we've got Rachel Hazelip, if we can get her tech issues worked out. And that's going to be a hell of an interview. And I'm just as excited about Representative Julianne Young from Blackfoot. She's facing a stiff primary challenge in her district. So we're going to roll our lovely stinger and we'll welcome you to episode 44 of Freedom Bros.
Well, first of all, apologies to all of our viewers. We got started 10 minutes late. We were helping a Gen Zer get the it's a Gen Z. I don't even know. I don't even remember which one
I think they're
which
called
anymore.
Zoomers. Zoomers.
Zoomers. Oh, Zoomers. Yeah, we got to help the
Zoomers.
Zoomers get their equipment running. And to be fair, I was not a good host. I did not have some directions laid out because I've always give people the link, and I think Dustin, you've been helping people behind the scenes get it figured out, and I'm just like, I don't know. The old people figured it out. You figured it out. Oh gosh.
Oh man, it's a wild world we live in. But I'm excited
Yeah.
about tonight's show. Before we do
Yeah.
that, Greg, you did a video. I want to talk just very quickly, and we'll talk about this more. Talk about there was a huge surprise today in Idaho politics with the NRA survey that came out. You want to talk about that in the video you did about that?
Yeah. So, what you guys can find on our Rumble channel, and by the way, we encourage everybody to get on our Rumble channel. The censorship's going to get worse and worse. So, get on our Rumble channel. It's streaming down at the bottom there. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been doing gun politics here in Idaho for a very long time. And it was kind of fascinating because typically, look, there's a whole bunch of fake Republicans that run and they either lie on the survey or they just don't return a survey. Okay, on our survey, and I imagine the NRA, it's typically the same thing. But it was weird because today we found out that 3 challengers and people probably with a decent chance of
Well,
winning
two,
potentially.
two.
Okay, but I mean it's not just nobody that's not doing anything. As far as I know, all 3 of them are trying to do something, right? I mean, they're not just sitting around doing nothing. And so
Right.
but there was 3 quote unquote Republican candidates who got Fs on the NRA survey. So the first one is Sherry Zhao up in District 5, who's running against Carl Bjork. Is that how you say it? Senator
Bjerke,
Bjork,
yeah,
who's solid
Bjerke.
pro 2A, solid conservative. And she, by the way, so when you think of the Democrats who put an R next to the name to run, this lady is literally that because she was just a couple years ago the Kootenai County Democrats treasurer. And from
Right.
what I've gathered from up north, she's a longtime Democrat activist. And so the
Right.
second one is out of Caldwell. This one was a little more surprising, right? Camille Blaylock, who is Tom Luna's daughter,
Yep.
she got an F. She's taking on Chris Trakel. And then in a three-way race down here in eastern Idaho, in Idaho Falls, Sean Coletti. Now, this one wasn't a surprise.
No,
I'm
not
kind of
at all.
surprised. I'm surprised he turned it in.
I'm surprised he got a grade as high as F.
Yeah, they were just like total enemy, which, by the way, that's what the NRA labels you, as a total enemy to gun rights if you get an F. So, and he's in a three-way race with Brian Smith, who answered the ISA survey, and Wendy Horman, who got an A rating from the NRA but refused to answer our survey. So, that's, I mean, you don't go against guns in Idaho. So I'm kind of shocked that all three of them even turned the NRA survey. You're better off with a question mark, to be honest.
It was so shocking that I had an elected official call me out of the blue because I tweeted it, like I tweet everything like I shouldn't. And this person called me and said, Are you being funny? Like, is this a joke? Is this satire? Did you Photoshop this? And I said, no, this is the real deal. He's like, no, that can't be. Like, you cannot run as a Republican with an F grade from the NRA in Idaho. What the hell? And so we checked it. You checked it, and it's legit.
I took screenshots from the NRA site myself.
It's absolutely legit. And that's wild, man. So check out Greg's video he did. And if you're not supporting the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, who is checking this better than the NRA actually is, you need to be supporting ISAA. So did you like that shameless plug there for you, Greg?
Heck yeah. We need an ad read, baby. We need an ad read.
There we go.
Oh, goodness. All right.
Let's bring on our first guest.
Okay. All right. There
she is. Hey, Representative Young.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. How are you? Do you like guns?
Sure.
What's your favorite type of gun?
Oh, you know what? I'll be really blatantly honest here. I don't know a ton. And so I'm a mom, and my husband and my kids go shooting all the time. Right. But I usually haven't been the one pulling the trigger, although I love to do it. I'm just not as informed about all the details as someone else. But what I do know is that Second Amendment right is there to protect us from over-encroachment by government, and that it's absolutely vital to protecting our freedom. So I don't know all the ins and outs of the mechanics and the names and everything else, but I know what freedom looks like. And I know it looks like the Second Amendment, and I can defend that all day long. So I hope you can forgive me on the other piece.
No, to be honest, Julianne, we have some donors who have told us, I don't own a gun. I don't want to shoot a gun. I don't like guns. However, I support the Second Amendment, and I understand how important it is to do that. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, that's fine. Because if you're not actively fighting against the right to keep and bear arms, then whatever. If you're going to help support us and help us defend it, then that's fine. So
and I actually do really want to get a concealed carry. That's on my bucket list. It's just not done yet.
Well, and I think your understanding of the Second Amendment is right, which is you'll see, especially with the Democrats of the world, that they'll go and advertise like Republicans. They'll go and act, they'll skeet shoot. They'll say it's for hunting, stuff like that. That's not what the Second Amendment was for. That's not why it was written. Remember, we had just finished liberating a country or getting away from tyranny, and it's almost a foreign thought. You'll hear people say, "Oh, we need guns because of the government," and then liberals will freak out. No, like literally, that's why we need guns. And you saw what happened in Australia. They were put in freaking COVID internment camps because they didn't have any guns. So I like that. I like that you understand that. So
the history is clear.
Yeah. Okay, Representative Young, you are running for re-election. This would be term number. You're in 3 right now, or you're in 4?
I'm just finishing 3.
Okay. Tell us so far what you've accomplished, what you're most proud of, what you've done for the people of Idaho while in office.
Yeah, I'm a mom, Dustin, and I've learned about a lot of things. I've done a lot of things, but the things that I'm most proud of are the things that impact families, because the family is the heart of America. And, that's what we protect. That's why we need the Second Amendment, because we want to protect our families. And one of the things that I was most excited about this last legislative session was getting a legal definition for male and female on the books in Idaho.
That's so
Huge.
Oh.
And, it couldn't have been more timely, right? With everything happening right now. So I'm just grateful for the folks that helped to get that passed. It took a lot of work and some pretty stiff backbones to get that muscled through. But it's one of those things that once you can get it to the floor, it'll fly. And
It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm not going to take shots. You're a very nice person, so I'm not going to take shots at people who opposed that bill. But there were some Republican lawmakers who opposed defining gender in state law, and I have no idea how anybody on our side of the aisle voted against that. I don't get it. I don't get it. But whatever. What else have you accomplished?
Oh gosh. Over the time that I've been here, we've expanded access to mental health, telehealth. We had a huge win for property rights this session with the annexation legislation that we passed, because Idaho was one of the only states in the country that allowed a city to forcibly annex property outside the city with no notice, no hearings, and no consent.
Oh, wow.
And that's a thing of the past now. Thanks to this last legislative session, they now have to have consent from at least 60% of the property owners in an area that's being annexed. So much more like a bond kind of vote, because your taxes are going to go up.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty big deal. We've worked on quite a few things trying to protect kids and adults, honestly, from pornography. Huge win with a requirement that if you're going to sell porn online, you have to do age verification. Just like when you sell cigarettes or tobacco. If you don't do it, then you can be sued now. And then another one that was a pretty big win along those lines is that with new AI technology, you can create nasty pictures of someone you saw at the grocery store and use it to ruin their life. And just went to a Farm Bureau meeting a little bit ago, and our sheriff was there, and we talked about that bill, and he was telling me we have 2 young people this last year that were targeted in an incident like that, and one of them committed suicide.
Oh,
The other one had the courage to talk to their parents and let them know that they were being targeted with this, and they were able to get help. So it's a pretty big deal. It wasn't criminal previously. It is now. Will be as of July 1st. So hopefully that'll help nip some of that stuff in the bud.
Yeah, there's some scary. I was just watching. I think Matt Walsh had shared something today on Twitter about some AI that was used to fake it was like a school principal or some school administrator in some other state, fake his voice saying some really horrible stuff. And then I don't know if he ended up getting in trouble or whatever. And he was like, "This isn't me." And they're like, "Well, it sounds like you, right?" And turns out, apparently they found out it was AI. At least that's the very little I'd gathered. I'm like, man, that's scary stuff. It's getting better. The technology, it's not good, but I mean, it's getting better to where they're going to replicate your face and your audio and everything and show you doing some horrible thing. And you're like, "Hey, that wasn't me, I swear." And and the damage is done by the time people figure it out. So
right. So that was a big win this session. Let's see. I was thinking of something else. Oh, I know. Conscience protection rights for counselors, so they can tell you when you walk in the door that they believe that men are men and women are women, and they don't have to worry about a lawsuit, and you know who you're working with.
Right.
I think that's a really good thing. And then we also have passed some good legislation over the last few years protecting kids from that aggressive transgender movement that wants to totally shake their identity to the core. Legislation prohibiting surgeries and mutilation of minors, which was incidentally upheld. Probably a lot of the listeners already know that by the Supreme Court recently.
Let's be clear, because I made this mistake too. So House Bill 71, which I was actually just looking up, you were one of the co-sponsors, really good piece of legislation. it wasn't fully upheld by the court. Basically, what happened is the court said, I think it was the 9th District, because the 9th District is the worst. They said, you can't enforce this while it's being litigated and going through the courts. And it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. Like, we're pretty sure that that's where it's going to go. But the victory was Idaho can enforce the law while it's going through the courts, but it can't enforce it on the 2 people who are suing
Correct.
over it, which is super weird.
Right.
Maybe they're grandfathered in, or is it grandmothered now? I don't know. Sorry, that was terrible. That was awful. But that was a huge win. That was a massive win for the state of Idaho, because the woke agenda is just, the woke trans stuff is just beyond.
Right.
That was good. That was a good piece of legislation. Did you do that one on the floor?
It was last year. I can't remember for sure, but Bruce and I co-sponsored together. And then we had another one this year that I think is equally as good, and that was prohibiting the use of Medicaid funding for those harmful procedures across the board, not just for minors, but just saying, taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used to destroy people's health. Really.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, Dustin, is I read through quite a bit of that the Supreme Court opinion on the Idaho law, and they didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. They seemed a little sympathetic. A lot of it was like, these lower judges have got to stop just putting an injunction on the entire laws. Like, so they really felt that they had overstepped their bounds in just saying, okay, no, the whole thing is just done. We're not doing it anymore. So they seem to be really frustrated with those cases coming up, and some frustration, honestly, on the emergency requests that Labrador filed and the other. And so there seems to be just some issues within the court system on how these cases are getting up there, what the lower court judges are doing, and all the emergency requests that follow that. So it's kind of sounds like a huge mess, but it is going to come back up to the Supreme Court again, I think, at some point. So for now, it's a victory.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. So you've talked about what you've gotten done. What haven't you gotten done that you want to do, that you would do in your next term?
Oh, boy. One of the things that I want to come back, just while we're on this vein of talking about protecting women and protecting kids in these situations, we've got to have something for rooming in the state of Idaho. We've got folks in mental health hospitals and in prisons that are involuntarily committed, and we've got administrations where there's pressure to put people of one biological sex in a room with another because someone identifies differently, without even disclosing that to the other person. And in a situation where if somebody were to discover it and object, they could be accused of harassment. So there needs to be some things done there. There's still some things that I'd like to see happen in terms of mental health care in the state of Idaho. And access, but that's a more difficult needle to thread. We started some legislation this last session dealing with unemployment, and we're going to continue working on that, because we have a lot of folks maxing out unemployment while employers are struggling to keep their businesses going.
Weird.
Which is crazy.
Weird how that works.
And they're being taxed to pay those folks unemployment while they don't have their positions filled. So we're going to continue working on that. Yeah.
I want to double back real quick, because there's one thing that I've thought about with the trans agenda. I'm sorry, we're just going to go. This is the anti-trans show, I suppose, or maybe pro-traditional values and pro-sanity show.
I like that.
In California, if I'm not mistaken, and this may be the case in other states, I suspect that it is, the parent, if there's a custody dispute in court, after a divorce or whatever, in one of these awful family situations, I have heard that the parent who, if there's a split on, affirming your kid's gender, the parent who is willing to affirm their kid's gender gets an extra thumb on the scale in court, because the court, the rules, regulations favor the affirming parent. Is that something that happens in Idaho? And is that something that we can dig into legislatively or in the rule book, the regulatory book, to see if we can make sure that, we're not tipping the scales for the crazy parents?
You know what? If it's not happening in Idaho, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it is good to address it. And there's a lot, honestly, going on with our Department of Health and Welfare along those lines that needs to be addressed, but it's going to require some digging and some work.
What is shift gears here a little bit to, what is when you first went into the legislature, you probably have some idea of what you think it's going to be like in that building. And I talked to a lot of our guests about what that place is really like versus what you might imagine that's like. What is your thought now that you've been in there for finishing up 3 terms, and from what you first thought it was like to what it's like now? What has that experience been like?
Yeah, Greg, it's so much more incredible than I even imagined. To me, it just blows my mind that we have a system of government that really does allow the people's representatives to be the controlling voice in terms of policy, if we will. And it makes me a little sad sometimes when I hear people talk about the legislature like they're in the way or like they're the source of the problems. Because while I recognize that we certainly have our issues, what an incredible gift, really a God-given gift that we have here to have a voice. And what a rare thing that is. And it just, to me, is such an honor to sit in that seat and be able to have a voice and say yes or say no and say why and say what's next.
Yeah.
What an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the system of government we have, which is, I would argue, is kind of teetering on the brink right now, at least nationally. Maybe not so much here in Idaho, but yeah, I mean, it's a frustrating system at times. It's the best in the world. Nobody's come up with a better one yet, that could possibly, even replace it. But I don't know. I still have a lot of frustration, quite honestly, in a state as quote unquote ruby red as we're supposed to be, according to Carrie Lake. And yeah, actually you were at the Carrie Lake event, so you heard her say that. And I'm like, see, I don't feel that though. I don't feel like I should have to fight as hard as I have to fight to get a freaking gun bill through the Capitol. Like, that seems insane to me, because if our state was blue and it was a whole bunch of Democrats, they would wipe out the Second Amendment in one term. It'd be gone. That's what they've done in other states. But yeah, we don't reciprocate that and go pass all 10 gun laws or pass all pro-education or stop all this, transgender madness. I mean, so I don't know. Do you feel that frustration yourself or from other lawmakers? You're like, what is happening? Why can't we do this?
Yeah, no, believe me, it's a lot of work. Just trying to get the definition of male and female, right? Was a lot of work. But here's the thing, it just underscores the reason that it's important for citizens to stay involved and to be informed, because it really does only take one election cycle to change things, for better or for worse. And I've seen progress, honestly, in a lot of different ways in the time that I've been here. But it takes constant, what is it? Eternal vigilance, right? So, yeah.
I'm curious, Representative Young, why don't we have education choice in the state of Idaho? We have seen red state after red state after red state, states that aren't as red as us, who actually have Democrats in their capital. They've passed education choice. We can't get it done. Why?
So I'm going to try not to ramble.
That's okay.
Fair enough.
That's a pretty big question. One thing that occurred to me as I was watching the dynamics, and this is a little bit of a theoretical kind of thing going on, but I was watching these folks say, we're conservative, and yet they were so zealously protecting an establishment. And I thought, why do they say they're conservative? Because the establishment itself is not very conservative. Right. And I was reading The Conservative Mind, and I'm trying to remember the author now. It was written in the 50s. It was kind of the hallmark of the conservative movement in the
Right.
Reagan days.
Yep.
And it starts with a description of Edmund Burke, and he's an English statesman. So here he is in England. He supported the American Revolution. He opposed what King George was doing as an Englishman.
Right.
But he's also watching the French Revolution sweep across Europe and threaten his own country. And so he's trying to explain to people why the American Revolution is good, why the French Revolution is bad. And this whole idea of conservatism actually came from him, and this idea that we should conserve our institutions.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes, in Idaho, I think back to the foundations of our community. So where I live in Blackfoot, my husband's father cut a farm out of sagebrush out in Pingree as a
Right.
boy with a
Yeah.
horse, right?
Okay.
And the community came together
Right.
to build a school and to create a community. And it's been such a sacrifice here in the Wild West, and particularly, in this Utah, Idaho area, there's such a strong commitment to education, and you go to church and you see your kids' teachers at the grocery store, and there's just this huge amount of protectionism, which I can understand.
Right.
But I also understand that we live in a world where people need options.
Yeah.
And so I think it's time. I think it's time to start looking beyond that protectionism or that version of conservatism, and look to give people. I don't know if I want to say it's liberal, but maybe it is. Liberalism initially was about having new ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
It was about being generous and open to things. We don't want California style liberalism, but maybe we need a little more openness and a willingness to give people a chance to try something new.
Well, I mean, technically, if I'm being honest, I define myself as a classical liberal, right? That's the words have different meanings. Liberal now means communist, right? Like that's a
Right.
thing.
Yeah, no thanks.
I literally am a classical liberal because I think the government's job is to do fire, to do police, to do roads, and to do a few basic other things, and to leave the rest of it alone. So I understand that. I think it's just so problematic when at the end of the day, I think both parties want everybody to be educated, right? And how we go about that is what really matters. And we keep throwing money into a system that doesn't produce results. I mean, there are schools in Idaho where, only 37% of the kids in 4th grade and 8th grade read at grade level. And that's, some of those are, I mean, some of it's 30%. There's lower, there's higher than that. But the system, regardless of how you think education should be delivered, it's not working. It's not working. So I guess I'm just a little frustrated that there's been zero action on that, and that we have a system that just is keeping these schools that don't work in power. And I don't know. There's no question here. I'm just a little frustrated that everybody else can do it and we can't. And it's so obvious what the answer is. Does that make sense?
It does. And I guess the thing that I think is the schools might work really great for some kids, for a lot of kids, but they don't work well for everybody. And there's no such thing as a one size fits all. Right. And families that are looking for something different need to be able to find it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. There isn't an issue you could talk to me about where I'm not going, well, the chairman and leadership, they ultimately control all this stuff. But to your point though, Julianne, if the people aren't involved, then nobody cares. And that's what I learned a long time ago doing the gun politics was, rather than me going down there by myself and just, talking to lawmakers by myself, trying to convince them, I'm like, what am I doing? The real lobbyists are the people. Like, they're the ones that should be lighting up the phones and emails. And so we shifted to doing that, getting the people involved. And then all of a sudden the stuff started shifting and moving and passing. It was like, oh, okay. And it is still a fight. It hasn't really changed, to be honest. It's still a fight like heck to get these guys to do anything sometimes. But you're right. The people have to be involved or nobody's going to do anything. So
it's true. All right. Well, Representative Young, our time has drawn to a close. I'm sure you need to put some kiddos in bed or something. But you've done us a huge favor by coming on Freedom Bros for us. So Tell us how people can find more about your campaign, donate, read your materials, whatever. Give them the pitch.
Sure. So my website is youngforidahohouse.com. So feel free to check that out. And anybody's welcome to reach out to me anytime. My cell number is on the website if you're looking for that. And I just love to hear from good folks and get good things done together.
Awesome. Representative Young, thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck in your contest.
Yep. Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye. All right. Good there.
Okay. That was good. She's always so thoughtful. She's like the most thoughtful person in the entire world. I remember she had a contest a couple years ago, a primary contest between her and that Travis dude who was always obsessed with the Idaho.
No, that was a general. That was the general.
Was it? Oh, you're right.
He's a Democrat. Yeah.
Well, I thought he ran in a primary too once because he was just so upset. But anyway, he would level these just unfair attacks on her and just the most dishonest, like Greg Graff level stuff, right? And she would write the most thoughtful, like nice responses. I was always very impressed with her style. So anyway, good lady.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears for a second.
Oh boy.
This is the interview that I have been waiting for weeks. Now, before we bring on the guest, I want to preface this, right? There is a movement, there is a sub-faction in the conservative side of the party right now that is telling me and others that Mike Moyle is God's gift to conservatives, right? They're telling me that Mike Moyle is the most conservative speaker we have and have ever had, and that he is the conservative answer for the 2025 and 2026 sessions. To the point where people have called me and asked me to shut up about Mike Moyle's deficiencies so that he will get reelected, so that Megan Blanksma does not become the next Speaker of the House. Okay, there's the frame up for the discussion that we're going to have. And I want to be clear about something. Mike, if you are willing to come on the show, I would love to have you. And quite frankly, anybody who is a Mike Moyle apologist, come on the show, because I would love to have this debate. Oh man, I'd love to have this debate.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, you've been very outspoken on Twitter.
Shocker! I'm so shocked.
Right? And people have asked me, because I typically don't get involved in a lot of that stuff because I'm just focused on the gun stuff. Look, I like Mike. He's a nice guy. I've had good conversations with him on guns. He's solid on guns. I'm not ever worried about him on the 2A issue. But like, his voting rate, he got like a 56% this session. So, I mean, I would like an explanation, because doesn't he normally go in like the mid 70s, low 70s with IFF, somewhere in there?
He does.
So he's not like the worst, like liberal Republican ever or anything, but for whatever reason, his score tanked bad this year.
Well, and I want to be clear about something. And Rachel, his opponent is in the studio right now. We'll get to her in just 1 second, but I just have to say some stuff first. I just have to. I've been holding this in for like 3 weeks. I'm dying.
Let it go, man. Let it go.
Okay. So yes, this year he was a 59.5 on the Idaho Freedom Index, right? Last year he was like a 75. So I don't know what happened. I have no idea. But the one thing that I know about liberals and Republicans is that when liberals are in power, they will cut your throat and smile while they do it. They will get their priorities through, and they will freaking just cut you and then twist that knife, right? They don't care.
Yeah.
If Mike Moyle was so conservative, we would have some conservative wins under him, right? But we have Julie Yamamoto as the House Education Secretary or Chairman, blocking education choice. We have David Cannon as the tax chair, who gave it a hearing but couldn't get it through. And everyone says, oh, he's so conservative. He let the launch bill through, which gives free college to kids in Idaho. That's redistribution of wealth, right? And they say, oh, he voted against it. I don't care, because he didn't stop it when he had the power to do it. So don't tell me that Mike Moyle is the conservative answer to anything, because he's not. I'm sorry. He's just not. Okay. I have that off my chest. Let's talk to Rachel.
All right. Let me bring her on. And hopefully,
Hi there. Can you see me?
Hey. It's a
I mean-
pixelated version of you.
In theory.
Oh no.
Well, as long as we have
we can
audio,
hear you
we're
though, at
fine,
least.
right? Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We
We're
can hear
good.
you.
Great. It's okay, I'm a
Yeah.
little door knocking today, so it's probably for the best.
Okay. I'm sorry, Greg. I'm just hogging things tonight. But
No, go
Rachel,
ahead, man. You're
Rachel,
good.
my first question is a question I have seen asked of you that I've been asked when I talk about you in this race. Why the hell aren't you waiting your turn?
If I had a dime for every time I've been asked that question, I would be very, very wealthy. Because we don't have time. We don't have time is the simple short answer. I hear that a lot of, particularly this kind of new faction of establishment that you had just mentioned, Dustin, is, oh, just give it a few more years, wait until he runs for another higher office. And I am of the firm belief that we do not have time in our country. We don't have time in our state. It was mentioned earlier that, why is it so difficult to get good legislation through in a red state, conservative legislation through? It's because we're a purple state. We are a red demographic, but we are under blue management. We are a purple state.
That's
And
so good.
you look back at Colorado, right? We study history because history repeats itself. If you look at Colorado, they flipped blue because of Democrats. They flipped blue because of liberal Republicans that let incrementalism destroy their state. And that is where Idaho is right now.
Yeah. Well, and it was a combination of that, and in Colorado in particular, of four very wealthy liberals funding a whole bunch of opposition. But if you look at Washington State, so my in-laws live in Washington State, and it was the same problem. You talk to the Republican Party there is pathetic. They're a bunch of losers, and they have been for a long time. And if you talk to Republicans coming from out of state, they'll all tell you, we didn't see it coming. We woke up too late. We didn't fight back hard enough. I mean, it's the same story in all of these states. And yet these idiot establishment Republicans here can't figure that out, or they don't want to. I don't know which one it is.
Right.
Rachel, you have two House members who could have used a primary. I like Bruce Skog. He's done a lot of the social issues right. But his Freedom Index score is, again, not where it needs to be. Why not challenge Bruce and take on a slightly less ambitious race?
Because we need better leadership. And I think there's a lot of I would call it actually propaganda and mongering going around, as you mentioned before, of, well, if we take out Moyle, then who's going to be next? The thing is with this, that's a very myopic view of this race, and of this election. If you look straight across the board, we have some incredible powerhouses that are running for the House this year. And if we are getting more conservatives in the House this year, that means we're getting a conservative leader, a conservative speaker of the House. 26 years is a very long time to be in office. And I am of the firm belief that is too long. I think corruption breeds with time in office. It's funny. I was door knocking last week, and door knocked this gentleman, and all tatted up, and he was former military and former law enforcement. And he opens the door and he's, "What do you want?" And started chatting with him, and kind of told him about why I was there. And I said, my opponent has been in office for 26 years. And he said, "Oh, well, you got my vote. Nobody can be conservative and have run for 13 terms." And I think that's a really good way to put it. If you look at the founding fathers, the precedent was set literally with George Washington that we need to term limit ourselves to mitigate corruption. And 26 years is too long.
we were Greg and I are in a private chat. Greg, I'll stop talking after this and let you
You're
talk
fine.
a little
You're
bit.
good.
We were in a private chat just with some of our buddies who do strategy and races and stuff like that. And I tweeted this too, because again, I tweet everything. But we pointed out that Game Boy Color was invented or released the same year that Mike Moyle took office. MySpace came 5 years after Moyle took office, and MySpace has come and gone.
Right.
It's
And then
been
come back. I think it's back again. So,
well, I
Well,
think Justin Timberlake bought it for like 20 mil, and then it just didn't work out. So he tried to turn it into a music site. It just did not work. But regardless, I mean, I think when in 1998, when he took office or was elected to office, I was in 8th grade. I was in like 8th grade. How you can stay in office that long and pretend you're not a career politician, I do not know.
he's been in office as long as I've been alive. I was born in 1997. He took office mere months after I was born, and he's been in office. I turned 27 on May 4th, and he's been
wild.
Alive.
Okay, let's move on from how horrible Mike Moyle is, although I'm sure we'll get back to it.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
My first question, and I ask a lot of people this is, a lot of people will come on here and say a lot of really good things, and Dustin and I have been doing this long enough to know that yes, the longer those people are in office, the more corrupt and more liberal they tend to become. However, some of them, Julie Yamamoto, get in there and they just become liberal right away, right? And she said all of the right things prior to running for office. All of them do. Every single person. Heck, all the long-term ones still say it. But so what do you have to show voters, or to assure them that you won't just become part of that problem once you get in office?
That's a really good question. For one, I think the most important thing about me is my faith, and that I'm grounded and rooted in truth, because of my faith. Jesus Christ is the author of truth. And so because of that, I'm rooted on truth. And this isn't about a career for me. I actually gave up a very, very big career opportunity to run for office. And I did that because I love this state and because I love my country. And at the end of the day, it's not about a career for me. It's about restoring this land that I love and helping make it be a more prosperous, benevolent, and free place. I want to have children one day, and when I have children, I want to give them the Idaho that I grew up in. The Idaho that I grew up in was as red as it gets, and it was a beautiful place to live, where small businesses would thrive and families were flourishing, and it's not that anymore. I'm seeing it move away from that. And at the end of the day, this is my home, and this is where I want to make my final stand, if you will. And so this isn't a career to me. This isn't about money or the prestige of whatever being in office. It's about this land that I love and the people that I love that are worth the sacrifice of my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor.
Okay. Hey, Dustin, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask her a question from a viewer. It's from the Range Minded podcast, which is a 2A podcast here in the state. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you, okay, so the question is, who does she look to as a role model? Who is her inspiration? Now, you already talked about Jesus, and Lord forgive me, I'm going to ask you not to mention Jesus for this one.
Oh my goodness.
No, but I mean, we already know that's one of her role models.
Yeah, you are a heathen.
And I'm also going to say no mom and dad. All right, unless there's some real.
Wow, you are anti-family, anti-Christ. What is going on tonight?
Anyway, so because look, all the politicians are going to say that, right? Every single one of them is going to do that. So I'm going to ask you to go and say, like, politically, maybe who is your role model?
Okay. Does it have to be current, or can it be previous?
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah. Whoever.
Okay,
She's gonna say the Apostle Peter. I know it. It's coming.
I'm not going to go contemporary. I would say probably one of my biggest role models, politically, but also with integrity, is Mike Gonzalez. Mike Gonzalez is one of the leading voices in the conservative movement. He works for the largest conservative think tank in the United States, actually, arguably in the world. He was grew up or was born in communist Cuba and moved to the United States and has dedicated his life to fighting Marxism that is spreading across our country. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of deeply, deeply rooted principles, and really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on with the liberal left coming after the American ethos and us losing the American identity of who we are as Americans. And he's served this country very, very honorably. And so I would say he's intellectually one of my greatest role models, but he's also politically one of my greatest role models. And he's taken some really, really hard stands. And I've watched him over the years take some really, really hard stands that have gotten him a lot of heat, a lot of people that have come after him. And he's stood very firmly on truth.
Wow. Okay.
I did not.
I was expecting her to say the Freedom Bros to try to get some brownie points, but
you
she
guys
failed. So.
Oh, obviously second. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Well, I want to, Rachel, I want to bring that question a little bit closer to home. I think that was a great answer. There are a lot of scholars that I respect. In fact, like Charles Cook is one of my favorite scholars. There's Jonathan Turley, weirdly enough, came out in favor of free speech, and he's writing a book about that. And free speech absolutism is where I'm at. And anyway, that was a great answer. I love anybody who can tell me a scholar who's a deep thinker who actually, knows the stuff. But I want to bring it a little bit closer to home and say, if you were to get elected, what would your career look like in terms of like, who do you emulate in the legislature? Is it Tammy Nichols? Is it Brian Lenny? Is it Mike Moyle? I mean, I'm just kidding. And you definitely cannot say Jesus for this one.
Easy answer: Glenita Zeiderfeld, Senator Glenita Zeiderfeld, Representative Jason.
Oh, that's a good one.
Those would be
I like it.
So wait. She said Jason Gallagher too, right?
Gallagher in the House and Glenita Zeiderfeld in the Senate, without a doubt, hesitation, no, nothing. I mean, those two women and Cindy Carlson.
Man.
Easily the most incredible and extraordinary legislators I would argue we've had in decades. Of course, Ron Nate is in there with the best legislators that we've had, but current seated ones, I would say those three women are extraordinary.
Wow.
Principled, liberty-minded, truth-grounded women.
Yes, absolutely. That may be the best answer we've had, and maybe that tops Jesus. I don't know, but I'm just kidding. I'm gonna get struck down. I'm so sorry.
Whoa, wait, geez, man.
I'm so sorry. That was too far. Oh, that was way too far. Okay. Policy-wise, there's a lot to get done in Idaho, as Greg and I have lamented the entire show and for the entire podcast. Idaho is a purple state. We're not getting red things done. Our governor is bragging about investing in new school buildings and giving free college to high school kids, which was Barack Obama's fever dream back in 2012. We're actually doing it. So if you're elected to the Idaho House, what would you do?
Oh, so many things. One of the big things we strengthen policy-wise is stand your ground laws. One of the things.
Okay, come on. No.
Yeah.
Stop right there. Are you kidding me?
Hold on, I have other.
Hey, shut up and let me talk. Jeez.
Education choice. One of the things that I'm really, really passionate about that I absolutely want to get through as soon as possible is getting civics requirements for high school graduation, to pass civics in high school graduation. If our kids don't know the rights and the duties of citizens, they will continue to lose their rights and they will not even know it. And that it is the tactic as old as time that the liberal left goes after children to take over a nation. Hitler did it, Stalin did it, Mao Zedong did it, Mussolini did it. They all did it. And the liberal left is going after our kids. And they're able to go after our kids because they don't know what their rights are. They're not given government by God that the government is established to protect. So that is I think one of the most critical things that we have got to get through for the sake of longevity of our country. So that would be a really important one. Actual good tax law legislation, getting through some real tax cuts, not moving and trading tax for tax, but actually getting rid of some grocery tax. Why the heck tax? Mike Moyle. So we need
100%.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those would probably be my 3 biggest ones, or 4, however many that was.
That's some solid stuff. That's some solid stuff. Oh goodness gracious.
Yeah.
What committees would you want to serve on?
Ooh, education. Health and welfare would be really interesting as well. I'd be happy to serve on, whichever committee. There's, of course, some committees that I don't know as much about, but I'm a quick learner, I'm a quick study, and I'm happy to learn what I don't know to do a good job.
The other knock against you, I think there's the why are you challenging our conservative idol in Mike Moyle? There's that one, right? But the other one is kind of what we touched on earlier, which is you are younger, almost younger than Mike Moyle's career. You're 26. You're not aged and wise like those of us who have our own podcasts, for example. Why should voters feel comfortable electing a quote unquote young person to an office that actually does require some wisdom?
Easy answer is look at the founding fathers. In 1776, actually over 50%, I think it was like 58% of our founding fathers were under the age of 30. So this country was actually established by young people. And if you look back in history, almost every great social movement and every great, I use the word revolutionary movement as in it revolutionized society, revolutionized whatever it was. Every big social movement like that, you can trace back to young people, number one. And number two, not all experience is good experience. My opponent has 26 years in office. He's very experienced. That is correct. He is experienced. But how is that experience serving us right now with him? And I don't have 26 years of experience behind me in the legislature, but I do have a lot of really unique experiences in this country, outside of this country, doing a wide variety of different jobs, and my background and my field of expertise is very specific, and it's very niche, and it's very well suited for this position.
Okay. I guess kind of along those same lines, what do you say to those? Honestly, I don't know that I've ever asked this, but I don't believe you're married or have kids. Rachel, why don't you go focus on a family instead of trying to become a politician? Hey,
We're doing that, huh?
That's a fair question that some people have asked me.
Oh my gosh.
You'd be surprised how
Well, no,
often-
I mean, if she was a male, I would have asked the same thing, like, "Hey, why aren't you focusing on a family or whatever?" So,
Oh my gosh.
It's a question I get asked a lot.
See,
but
thank you.
The short answer is, I want to give my children freedom in this country and in this state, and there's not time to waste. I think if there's one thing that I try and convey to voters when I'm door knocking, or when I'm at meet and greets, or whatever it is that we are in the 11th hour here. Our backs are against the wall. We are losing our country, and we are losing our state. We are in the final hours, and there's not time to wait. There's not time to dilly-dally, and yes, I would love to and start a family. This is the mission that the Lord has given me right now. that have asked me to step into, this role that the people have asked me to step into. And I want to do that. And I want to serve my state, serve my country in this capacity. And when the Lord brings a husband and kids, I'll be really happy with that, whether that's while I'm in office or after I'm out of, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's get
just so
back to
everyone's
the.
clear, I don't have any issues with her running at all. In fact, I was thinking maybe she'll meet her husband in the Capitol. Just
Oh my
make
gosh!
sure
Stop!
they're not already married.
Stop! Are you going to ask
No
her to make a
comment
sandwich
on that.
next? Goodness
No.
gracious, Greg! Stop! That's
Oh,
terrible.
my gosh.
Okay. Back to the non-weird questions. We have talked about how Mike Moyle is the fossil of the state house, and he really is. I think he might be the longest tenured lawmaker in the state house.
Mhm.
But let's bring that back to you. Let's say you get elected. You have a good career. How many terms will you serve? Are you going to serve? Would you be willing to serve 13, or would you find a way to limit yourself?
I am a firm believer in term limits. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, George Washington was the perfect example of that. If we term limit our president at 8 years, why in the world do we have people at all other levels of government serving for 15, 20, 30, 40 years? That's ridiculous. I am not opposed to somebody serving for 8 years in one seat and then 8 years in another seat and 8 years in another seat. That is perfectly fine.
I'm sorry. Stop, Greg. I'm going to kill you. I swear. I'm so sorry. You're so articulate and you're so on it. And then Greg is making comments or showing comments about arranged marriages by Freedom Bros. This is not a dating service.
I want to see it now.
It's okay.
Oh,
I may
man.
prefer when Greg misses the shows from now on.
Oh.
Okay. So you'd be fine. I'm so Greg, you're killing me.
See, but
Okay,
here's the thing though. Like to her point, here's where we're getting problems. Okay, because what you'll find is that conservatives get in there and they've been in there 10 years, 12 years, or whatever, and they're like, well, if I don't stay in, then an establishment hack is going to replace me. And so they just stay in office forever, right? And so that is hard to term yourself as a conservative if you're going to be a real one, because there's so few of us willing to go into that place that you almost feel compelled to stay in there and keep fighting, but then you become a career politician. So,
and I agree, but I also point you back to the model. So the founders model was you serve your time and you bring up somebody behind you that you're pouring into and that you're teaching and that you're coaching and you're discipling to take your position, because absolute power corrupts absolute every single time. You cannot be a career politician. I don't think you can really be in office longer than 4 terms and not see some level of corruption creeping in. I don't care how good you are. And I think that we all need to that as people, that we are susceptible to that and say, this is my line in the sand. I'm stopping here and I'm going to bring up somebody behind me that can then, I can get us this far. I can move the dial this much. They can move it further. And I'll teach somebody to come up behind me and serve in that capacity. That's the founders model. And I firmly believe that that's what we have to be doing.
yeah.
That speaks to our human natures, which is that we're fallen people, we're imperfect, we're susceptible to corruption and evil, quite frankly.
Right.
I want to get into a slightly different evil that I've asked other candidates, and I want to know from you. Vote trading. Are you willing to trade votes to get done, your baby policy? Say it's education choice or it's, I don't know, whatever. But a leader comes to you and says, we can get your thing through, but we need your vote on this piece of crap. Would you vote for this piece of crap? Tell me.
No, I'm not going to compromise my integrity.
I mean, that was easy. I expected a longer answer. That was easy.
I don't think it needs to be a longer answer. I'm not going to compromise my integrity. I'm not for sale. My integrity is not for sale.
Yeah. And again, I go back to, I'm loving all the answers. It gets hard for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people get in there because it's your issue, right? It's your issue. And now here you are. Now I hope that you do that. So I'll give you a quick example. When we were passing constitutional carry back in 2016, the NRA and the establishment went behind closed doors. They came out with a version right at the end of session. And keep in mind, this is after 4 years of me dedicating my life, volunteering, trying to get this issue through, right? That's a long time. And they came out with a version at the very end of the session that had gun control in it. And I was like, no, like, what are we doing? No. And so we went down, we killed it in the Senate, stood outside the chambers with signs that said, this has gun control in it, killed it. The NRA rep calls me and he's like, dude, this is your issue. What are you doing? Like, this is what you've been fighting for. I'm like, no. And so we killed that, and they came out with another version and stripped the gun control out of it. But I'm telling you, that is not easy for a lot of people, right? Because you're going, I've dedicated so much time. This is it. Here's my issue. Yeah, I'll come back and fix that later. I'll get more later.
Of course. So empathize with that kind of temptation. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to trade saying, okay, fine, I'll vote for this bill that is full of everything I stand against, Marxism, whatever it is, red flag gun laws, whatever it is. I'm not going to say, okay, fine, I'll trade something really good for something really bad. That's not actually and that's something that I'm very aware happens. And I frankly think it's pretty disgusting. And I want no part of that.
I want to talk strategically, and obviously if there's anything proprietary, don't share that. But you came out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere last time, and came within 12 points of the majority leader of the Idaho House in Mike Moyle. This time you are a little bit more established. You have name ID amongst the activists because you've kept your name there. You've been doing work with the Republican Party. You just have a good profile with folks, and people who are in your camp absolutely rave about you. But the question I have is, you lost by 12 points last time. I think you recognize that, and if you don't, that's a bigger problem. But what changes this time to overcome a 12-point deficit?
Strategically, I think a lot of things are different this race. There's a lot more at stake because he's the Speaker of the House. And we have a lot of different allies than we had last time because he's the Speaker of the House. And the difference this time, I would say, if I had to summarize what the difference is this time, it would be the people and the churches. We have seen increased engagement with the churches like we've never seen before.
Interesting.
Coming out in droves. They're waking up. They're realizing that they've been buying into a lie of the separation of church and state for decades. Years and years. And so, number one, we have the churches. And then number two, we have the people. It's the people. That's why I'm running. Is the people have been asking me to run again for 2 years. And I think a lot of people have, Mike Moyle got in last time and people were really hopeful. They thought, okay, well, maybe because it was such a close race, maybe he'll be more conservative. Maybe he'll move further to the right. And a lot of people, not the elected, there's kind of this dissociation, right, between the people and what goes on in the Capitol. And the people have really been let down. I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on that they're like, yeah, get him out. We had high hopes and nothing. He's not delivering. And it's true. And we've seen some very, very liberal sessions under Mike Moyle's leadership. So the difference I would say is 2022 really paved the way to prepare the people for a very conservative sweep, I think, straight across our state. And people are realizing and recognizing the hour that we're in. And they're getting on board big time.
Good. I think I'm good. Greg, are you good? But never mind.
Yeah.
No,
Never
Yeah,
mind.
we're good. We're good. Yeah.
Okay, Rachel Hazelip, you have
Graph's
done
already
us-
clipping stuff out. We already
Yeah.
know it. We know
Yeah,
it.
no, it's this will be front page news on the Greg Graff Insane
Oh,
Report
good.
tomorrow. But Rachel, you've done us a huge favor by coming on the show. This was a really important episode for us for a number of reasons. But I want to do you a favor. Tell people how they can learn about you, how they can support you, how they can read more about your campaign. Just give us the pitch for our loyal listeners and viewers, will you?
Yes, my website is hazelipforidaho.com. And I'm very, very reachable by email or phone. My email address is hazelipforidaho@gmail.com. And my phone number, I had to write it down because I always forget it, is 208-546-9461. And I literally talked on the phone for probably 2 hours today with constituents that just call me. They call me a lot, and sometimes it's literally, "Hi, just wanted to see if you would answer." You know, you got our vote, kind of thing, because you answered.
That's awesome.
So very, very reachable that way, and love to hear from people about the things that matter to them. What is it in our state that's happening right now that matters? Is it tax? Is it water rights? Is it your kids' education? What is it? I want to hear from you. And a good way to my background is all on my website. I also have resources on my website, my policy stances, and like I said, a little information on me as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good luck in the campaign and stand strong. This is an important race, probably more important than I think people realize. So good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, real quick, Rachel, what district are you and what area of the state is it? Somebody's asking.
Oh, great question. District 10, which is Star, Middleton, North Nampa, Northeast Caldwell.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Very good.
All right.
Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oops, failed.
All right. You were doing it too. Sorry.
Yep. You are the most embarrassing co-host. I swear.
That was the most we have ever laughed on this entire thing. You know,
that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Look, first of all, she is an incredibly articulate candidate. That was hands down probably the top 3 interview for a candidate that we've done on the show in the 44 episodes. You agree?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, we've both talked to her in person before, not very much, just at like the Glenn Beck event and stuff like that. So very limited conversation with her, and she seems articulate. But that was actually, honestly, probably one of the best candidates in terms of how long she did not talk. Thank goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Some candidates that come on here, they just ramble for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, dude, you've got to stop. So, but no, I mean, she's very articulate, well spoken, and I like her answer to who do you aspire and look up to. I was like, dang, okay,
that was no joke.
I was expecting like, Ronald Reagan's my,
George W. Okay, not that guy, but you know what I mean.
But yeah.
That would have been a red flag. That would have been a huge red flag. No, I think setting aside, and we'll come back to Moyle in a second, but setting aside the Moyle thing, she's just an impressive candidate who and everybody can talk a good game. Well, some candidates can't, as we've seen on this show, but people can talk a good game. But I think I get the impression that she actually means what she says. I really do. And I hope she wins, quite frankly, because I think she would bring a lot of youthful energy into the conservative movement, which has kind of lost some steam since Ron Nate's departure. So I hope she wins. I really do.
Yeah, no, again, we talk about this offline all the time. Like, I just don't trust anybody until they've been through that fire.
Yes.
But she hangs around the right people. She says a lot of the right things that there's a little bit more confidence maybe that she would not falter when she gets in.
Right.
But at the same time, like, let's see, once you're in that fire and all that power and prestige and everything else is coming at you, we'll find out. We'll find out real quick. Because we've both seen some really good people turn once they've got in that place.
One final note. And I know it's past my bedtime. I know it's past your bedtime, but I want to jump off of the Rachel Hazelip train for just a second and go back to the Mike Moyle train. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know. And that's one reason that we brought this show is we can't say everything that we know because that's just politics. But I want to say as much as I know, and I'm not going to burn anybody name wise. I don't want to because I need some connections. But I think the most offensive thing in this whole Rachel versus Mike contest was Mike had a lobbyist call me and say, hey, why did you get Rachel Hazelip to run against Mike Moyle? And I said, I didn't. That wasn't my choice. That wasn't my choice. And I know that several lobbyists called other people in our circles saying, why is Rachel running? Why is she doing this? Why is she challenging the Speaker of the House? It was one of the most entitled things that I've ever seen in Idaho politics in my entire career doing this 15 years. Nobody is above a primary challenge. They're healthy for the Republic. Even if you're a conservative, you deserve one because conservatives can get arrogant, and we're seeing that in some of our conservatives. They can get arrogant. They can become part of the establishment. I was incredibly offended, and the lobbyist and I were friends. I like him a lot. I was a little offended that call was made. I don't care who you are. If you are a bad politician, if you're not doing conservative things, you deserve a challenge. I don't care what position you hold. Don't care. And as much as I love Ron Nate, or Brian Zollinger, if they had gone establishment or if they had 59.5% index scores, I would challenge them too. So
yeah, I don't, the mentality that there's some sort of you can't challenge this person at all. No, the establishment is always going to challenge us. Is Mike calling around trying to get establishment candidates not to challenge the good conservatives? Maybe he is. Not that I've heard. Not that I've heard.
And that's the thing is they say, oh, well, he has to waste money to defend himself, and he was going to distribute that money to conservatives. No, he wasn't. If he was going to distribute money, it would go to people like Jason Monks, who is fine, not terrible, not great.
Sure.
It would go to people like Julianne Young, who's good, better than Jason Monks. It wouldn't go to people like Dale Hawkins or Jason Gallagher or some of the Kerry Hanks of the world. It wouldn't go to them. It would go to Rod Furness because Mike needs to shore up his power in the House because he's a little bit vulnerable as Speaker. It never would have gone to the people on our side of the fence. Never.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I agree. I don't, man, the establishment has always had this, you don't run against me until I die or I retire.
Nope.
Right.
Don't play that game.
I hated that crap. It drove me crazy. Lurcher. So if you don't know, that's another story for another day.
Oh man, that was a wild race. That was one of my favorites. Okay, that was a heck of a show.
It was fun.
A couple things we were going to do some anti-endorsements tonight. I don't think we're going to get there. I don't have the graphics for them. Maybe if you want to announce them, we can, but I don't have the graphics yet. We can do it tomorrow. But
I noticed that when we came on, and about 10 minutes in, I was like, wait, we don't have our anti-endorsements. Might have to do a special episode here shortly. Maybe in a few days or something, we'll pump out some anti-endorsements. But
so just so everyone's aware, and we have a new listener tonight, which is cool. I don't know your name, but the Range Minded Podcast, welcome to it. We decided that there are so many endorsement voter guides. In fact, as Treasure of Idaho Freedom Pack, we released one earlier tonight, which is a good one that you should check out. But we decided we're going to tell you the worst trash candidates that you should not vote for. And I think so far we've anti-endorsed Jeff Agenbrod and Jeff Schroeder, right?
Yeah.
So we have 3 more in the pipeline. I think what we'll do probably in a week or two is we'll just do a full-on anti-endorsement show and just go from the top of the state, from Bonners Ferry down to freaking Preston, and we will, at the legislative level, we will do anti-endorsements where we can.
It's a focus on just the worst people. Okay, so it's not like we're going to go through and have 200 anti-endorsements. It's these people are the worst of the worst in the Capitol, or the worst of the worst who are running for office. And there may be some outside legislative candidates who may be running for a prosecutor in a certain county that they're just horrible human beings and should never be in elected office.
Okay, fine. If we're gonna do that, can we just announce that one and I'll prepare the graphic tomorrow?
Yeah, you go ahead, because I know
Okay.
you're more excited about that one.
I am so excited about this one, not because he's trash, he is, but I guess our third anti-endorsement will go to Greg Chaney, who is running for Canyon County prosecutor against Chris Boyd. If you don't know Chris Boyd, he's somebody that I can comfortably endorse. He was the guy who stood up during COVID, and he said, Governor Little, I am not, as a prosecutor in Adams County, I am not going to enforce your stay-home order. It's not constitutional. You can't do this. Screw you. That's who Chris Boyd is. And Greg Chaney is a petulant little child who needs to never run for elected office ever again. And hopefully, if he loses this time, which I think he will, because Boyd has the backing of all the law enforcement, Raul Labrador's behind Boyd, all like the good Canyon County politicians like Brian Linney are behind Boyd. Hopefully he'll get the message and just hang up his political cleats forever. So anti-endorsement number 3 is Greg Chaney for Canyon County prosecutor. There you go. I'm going to make the graphic tonight.
It's tough not to just make it a family thing.
Oh, we will. We will, because in that race, I mean, so if you don't know, Sarah Chaney, who actually made a PAC called Liars, Libertarians Imitating as Republicans, which you missed the acronym there. It could have been Libertarians Imitating Actual Republicans, but she completely failed there. Like,
yeah.
She's running against Lucas Kaler, who's a Navy vet, a very good Christian man. She's going to lose too. We will anti-endorse her when the time comes.
Oh man. Well, that's been fun. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. It was good. Arranged Marriages by Freedom Bros coming soon.
You idiot.
Oh, good times. Good times.
It reminds me of farmersonly.com, right? Those are the commercials that run on the country music channel. It's freedomonly.com. We'll start a freedom dating service.
Look. All right. I know we all want to go here and we want to go to bed, but here's the thing. In our culture, okay, in the LDS culture, that is a big question, right? If you have a female who's, and if you have a Mormon female who's freaking 26 and not married, people go, hey, you should really focus on marriage. I'm just saying. I'm not saying I have any issues, but culturally, that's a big deal in Idaho. So I'm just saying. That's why I think it's a legitimate question. Like, hey,
okay.
And she's been asked. So
to our listening audience, if you would like to replace Greg as co-host of Freedom Bros, please reach out to me. I'm gonna replace him right now.
Never gonna happen.
Oh goodness gracious, that was fun. Okay, next Thursday, I have no idea who we're gonna have on. We'll have somebody. Don't know. We do this thing last minute anyway, but we still have a fun time.
We're gonna try and cram in a bunch of shows here, I think, before the election. So stay tuned.
That we are. All right, everybody, we're gonna play the stinger, get out of here, and Greg's going to farmersonly.com. This is episode 44 of Freedom Bros. Thanks for watching.
All right, have a good night, everybody.